this trade fixes all the 49ers defensive issues? Or do you think maybe it's a good move for cheap? And because, right, even if they don't sign him long term, you kind of get that third round comp pick back at the end of the year. So do you think it's a good move that, can't hurt, but maybe doesn't fix everything? Or do you think this could be the Band-Aid? Last year when they traded for Christian McCaffrey, that literally changed their season. I think they won every game except for the Chiefs game after that. So
Yeah, I like it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I like the compensation that you give up. It's a third-round pick for a player who this year has been one of the top edge rushers in the game. If you look at some of the analytical Pro Football Focus numbers, the sack numbers, the pressure numbers, he's been top 5, top 10, top 15, regardless and depending on which numbers you look at. So I think when you talk about the player, I really like it for the value that they gave up to bring him in. A third-round comp pick for Chase Young is a steal, in my opinion. And if they don't end up re-signing him, which if he plays well, he's going to land a pretty large contract, then they're able to get a third-round pick back. So at that point, it would be a rental. You trade away a third, you get him, he can help you in hopefully what is a pursuit of a Super Bowl championship. And if he leaves, you get that third-round pick back. And you kind of look at what the Bears gave up for Montez Sweat. It's an early second, and this Niners compensatory pick would most likely be between 80 and 90. So I think that Chase Young, when he's right, when he's healthy, he's the better player than Montez Sweat. And the Bears gave up a lot more for a player that they're probably going to sign to a contract extension. And then when you talk about the need on this Niners roster, I certainly think secondary has been a problem, was a problem, is a problem. But I think what San Francisco's thought process here is at some point, Nick Bosa is going to have a sack party, right? And at some point, those sack production numbers are going to come. The Niners right now are tied for 18th in the NFL among 32 teams with 18 sacks. And this defensive line unit has been very disappointing considering they're paying $92+ million combined to Bosa, Javon Hargrave, as well as Eric Armstead. So I think San Francisco looked at this as at some point the talent is going to win out. At some point, those players are going to produce. And Chase Young now makes that entire defensive line better, more daunting for the opponent, and a more difficult matchup. What it also does is it's really difficult for the opposing offensive line when they're game planning to figure out, okay, who do we double team here? Do we double team Bosa? Do we double team Armstead? Do we double team Hargrave? Do we double team Chase Young? Now that you have all these players in, I'd like to see some more 5-man fronts from Steve Wilks. If you go with that bear front, that's 5 defensive linemen along that line of scrimmage, you can't really go double team on an individual player. And then I think that the talent can win out. And in turn, if you're able to finish, get sacks, and consistently pressure the quarterback, they're not going to have all day to throw like sometimes Joe Burrow did this past Sunday or Kirk Cousins did 2 Mondays ago. And in turn, it makes the back end's job a little bit easier. So for those reasons, I do like the move. Most importantly, just because of what you gave up for a player who has a lot of potential. I mean, in the full seasons that he's played, when he was a rookie in 2020, he won Defensive Rookie of the Year. And this year, up to this point, he's been really productive. He's a physical freak. The injury concerns certainly are there because he missed a lot of 2021 and 2022 with complications with that knee injury. I don't make too much of people in Washington saying, oh, he has character concerns. He kind of freelanced. He did this. He did that. If there's one organization that can get a player right, it's San Francisco. And if I'm an athlete,
and if
I don't want to play.
That can get a player wrong, I feel like
Exactly. It's Washington, an organization that I would never want to play for, even now that they moved away from Dan Snyder.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like he's really incentivized too, like especially if the Niners do keep him as more of a 1-year rental. He's really incentivized to go off this season. And I like that you brought up the injury concerns because I feel like normally if the 49ers trade for an injury-riddled player, I'm like super hesitant. But because he is only here for a year and so far, knock on wood, seems very healthy, I think I think that would be a conversation if they were trying to sign him long term. But if they're really more going in like all in for this year, thinking they can win a Super Bowl this year, all they really need to worry about is if he's able to stay healthy for this year, which he's going to do everything in his power to do. because he wants to get that better contract. And obviously he's going to have like even more of an incentive because he knows on this team, the spotlight is on him compared to on the Commanders and the playoff opportunity, more games to show out, able to make more money. Being a bookend across Bosa, that will open up Bosa because, like you said, opposing teams are going to have to, maybe their mindset would be to double team Bosa, but right now, Chase Young is the leading sack, like has the most sacks out of anyone on the 49ers defensive line. And yeah, I think as long as he's able to stay healthy for this year, it's an amazing trade that has very little downside. I think when you would start talking into like more of the concerns, it would be for more of a long-term contract, which this isn't. And he's so cheap right now. To me, it seems like a no. There's no like downside to it. Now,
Yeah, I don't see a downside. I mean, you're paying him less than $600,000. I think anytime that you can get a motivated player who's trying to get the bag, that's a good thing because he's going to be incentivized, as you said, to play his hardest, to produce as much as possible. I also think this is a great opportunity for Chase Young. He had a great rookie year, won Defensive Rookie of the Year, as I said, but that organization has been poorly run for a really, really long time, and players haven't been able to really reach their fullest capabilities. And I think whether you're a professional athlete or you're working like you and I for a company or whatever, if you're working for a dysfunctional business, there's kind of always that dark cloud that hovers over you because you're knowing that you're working at a place with not a lot of support, not a lot of stability. I think that Trent Williams can speak to that, right? Because he was with Washington. Now it's almost a new lease on life. It's a great brand, one of the most iconic brands in all of sports for an iconic franchise that right now has a great opportunity to add that 6th Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, and with Chris Kocurek too, like I feel like because I did read that Mike Silver article that for anyone who didn't read it, talked about Washington saying that he had some concerns with his mentality and maybe like missing assignments and stuff. I feel like on this defensive line, he's going to be more motivated to kind of stick to his exact assignments, whether or not that's just because Chris Kocurek is such a great coach or because now he knows he has all the support around him. And if he can just play his role, you've seen other guys come in for the 49ers for 1 year and then leave getting really massive contracts because they were able to just play their role on the team. And I think that could help other teams at the end of this year maybe look at him and say, okay, maybe his struggles more had to do with the dysfunction of the Commanders versus like him as a person. So if he has people on the Niners who will like vouch for him, that's really going to help him too. So to me, when you get a second chance like this, you're not going to ruin it. And it seems like he is extremely happy. I heard Deebo Samuel say that he already had heard from him when Deebo Samuel was asked about it on the Kay Adams podcast. I know Chase Young himself tweeted out like, thank God. So I feel like he's really excited. And this doesn't seem like something he's going to kind of take for granted. I think the 49ers are getting the best version of Chase Young as long as he can stay healthy, mentality wise, at least. I wouldn't be concerned.
I also think it's awesome. Chris Kocurek is the best defensive line coach in the NFL, and he maximizes any defensive lineman pretty much that he coaches. And now, I mean, what a job for him. He's looking at some studs. He's looking at some dogs. He's looking at some horses on that front.
Now, talking about some winners and